Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg-Shaped. And today is an intriguing pod with a guest that I don't know at all. We've just met. We've done that usual thing of communicating with each other on social media, and I really admire what he's got going on, and it's something that's reasonably close to my heart because the source of it comes from just down the road in the very first international between Scotland and England at the Raeburn place. But it's far better for him to explain than it is for me. He's got an accent from just south of Croydon, I reckon. Let's bring in the one and the only Mr. Dave Algie. Hello, Dave.
Hello, how's it going? Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely delighted to talk to you. This one's been in the pipeline for a while, and we've finally nailed it down through power cuts and all sorts of other nonsense. So here we are. So, Dave, firstly, let's hear from you. Where are you from, and where do we find you now?
Yep, I'm just a simple Kiwi boy over from Dunedin, and been living in not far from Twickenham for about 20 odd years now. I am married a Brit. What are you going to do? You get stuck.
Yeah, one of these buggers that comes from overseas, takes her jobs, takes her. Yeah, one of those.
I mean, I'd trade you, but I don't think that's the dumb thing to do.
I love it. I love it. Now, this thing that has come from you, it seems like, what was the motivation, what was the trigger to come up with the Raeburn Shield and the Utrecht Shield?
Yeah, it's funny, they've always existed in theory, but nobody ever realized it. So it was kind of 2008ish. We were on a rugby forum, a bunch of us, and pretty sad about the All Blacks yet again losing a Rugby World Cup. And I think we all just threw our hands up going, there's got to be a better way. Like, there has to be a better way. And so we were looking at statistics and figuring out, well, what about like a winner stays on, a kind of lineal championship? And went away and figured it out and went, well, this works. This is a thing. Like, this makes sense. And so we decided we'd name it after Raeburn Place, the location of the first rugby match. And I think that probably would have been that. But I am not really built that way. I just looked at it and I went, this would be good. This would be good for the fans. It adds something to us. That 4-year cycle where we're not all competing for the same prize, it lacks something. And I was like, this is good for the fans. So ever since then, really, I just kept the website ticking along, and the kind of social media, I've had it all there. Probably more recently, I've gone, actually, I need to give it just a little bit more of a kick, make sure that we get it there, because it will happen. It's just a matter of time.
I think it's an amazing idea. And now this is obviously just your hobby. This is your passion. What is it drives you to make it something that you want to make everybody aware of?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to one simple thing. Rugby, international rugby, is more fun when we all compete for the same prize. That's why we love the Rugby World Cup. That's why it's so much fun. And I love competing against South Africa. I love competing against England. We love all of those things, but it's so much better when you can plot the course of it through. And so I guess the thing that drives me is the fans. So people often talk about, oh, do World Rugby recognize it? They don't. They will eventually, but they're sort of irrelevant at this point because it's the fans that matter. So this is something that'll bring a huge amount of value to fans as we're all plotting what's happening and we actually get that excitement of it. And World Rugby can follow later. I think New Zealanders often get it because we've got something called the Raeburn Shield.
Yeah, I did wonder if that was a bit of a trigger for you.
Yeah, I just know the passion it evokes, right? So the Raeburn Shield is only defended away from home. At home. But the passion in those games is huge. So, I'm an Otago supporter, and basically throughout my whole childhood, we never won it. And it was depressing, but it was also that prize just out of reach. Subsequently, they've won it quite a lot since I've left the country, which might be a sign. But it's, and I think it was that thing of actually that in international rugby be amazing. So a good example is like New Zealand. We haven't held the Raeburn Shield since 2017. We haven't even had a shot at it since 2018. And, if it were recognised and the players knew that, they'd be itching. Can you imagine the All Blacks, the next time they get a shot at that shield, they'd be eating red meat all week long and they'd be completely fired up,
I love it. Now, the Raeburn Shield, let's go back to that a little bit, because It's something you're probably not massively aware of unless you're a Kiwi or you've been there. I spent a bit of time in Hamilton, the Waikato, and I saw the Waikato team with Ian Foster at fly half defend the Shield through that season. And, they had a heap of players, Aaron Hopper, Rhys Duggan, Glenn Jackson as a young fly half trying to oust Ian Foster. And they were a strong team that held the Shield. And it meant as much as any of the other trophy, the MPC. Holding on to the log of wood was a big, big deal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's hard. It's really difficult. It's because people are coming for you, right? Like they get one shot at it. So every week that you have to defend it, you just got to get up again. And it's the stories that come out of it are huge, because the celebrations are huge. And I think I just enjoyed that. Growing up with it, I recognised it, and I was like, imagine that across the world.
And the powerhouses in New Zealand rugby, like you said there, the All Blacks haven't held the Shield, the Raeburn Shield, since 2017, not had a shot at it since 2018. Auckland couldn't always get their paws on the Ranfurly Shield because it might just not have worked. So it gave everybody something to shoot at. And when I look at the list of Raeburn Place winners, there's some really interesting countries on there.
Yeah. It's, Romania in the mid 1980s held the Raeburn Shield. And they were powered by I think it was their kind of communist dictator who basically funded the rugby program at that point. So hey, it got them a Raeburn Shield, And actually, it was Scotland that lost it to them.
Well, I was going to say there's a bit of a folklore here that when Romania came to Edinburgh, and Romanian second row was taken out the back door of a pub and never went back to Romania and ended up playing at a club just down the road here, Boroughmuir at Megatland. I've got their shirt on my wall up here. So there's lots of little stories that must tag off the Raeburn Shield, a bit like the Ranfurly Shield. I mean, some of the defences and shock wins, club areas that only maybe held onto it for a game, but for that time they were kings in New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the heartland teams when they can get hold of it, and so I think that's what I love is in 1999 Samoa would have held the Raeburn Shield, and can you imagine that's huge, right? Like who sees them winning a world title? But they did, and they have, and that's really exciting as it comes through. Now, those teams held it once, so that's the big thing, right? Like you can challenge and win for it, but then defending it is the real challenge. Like how long can you keep hold of it?
And having Samoa being able to take a trophy home, they've won World Sevens titles, which is a big deal, but holding something in the 15s, and they've got a realistic shot. They could play against a Northern Hemisphere team and get a result, and then have a tangible trophy to hold on to and say, look at us, imagine taking that home to the islands.
Yeah, well, and there was a point. So Scotland lost the Raeburn Shield on the weekend, but somebody pointed out they might be playing Chile before they get through. And there could have been a scenario where Chile were challenging for a World Shield if Scotland could have held on to it. As it stands, they lose their shot, and so it's that thing, isn't it? That's so far but so close, So you have these teams who are looking at it going, all right, we're going to get a chance. And then a week before, it just gets whipped away because somebody else wins it.
And we love uncertainty in sport because if you knew it was going to happen, you wouldn't bother.
Yeah. Though I can give you some certainties, which is the Utrecht Shield, which is the women's version of it.
Yeah.
I can give you some certainty that England, the current holders, are probably going to keep it for a while.
They are going to keep it for a while. They are all over it. So did the Raeburn Shield idea come first, and then you thought, hang on a minute, the Utrecht Shield is something we need to investigate? Yeah.
So the Raeburn Shield came first, and I think I've always been a huge fan of the women's game. I was at the 2010 Rugby World Cup final. Maggie Alfonsi was amazing, and Carla Hohepa, the pair of them were fantastic that day. But I hadn't thought through the Utrecht Shield at that point, and there was actually somebody else who went, you know what, we should replicate this. And a guy called Matt set that up and kind of went, oh, like this works. And I approached him and said, because he kind of wasn't getting the time to look at it, I was like, mate, I'd love to bring these together. It's like, yeah, go for it. And so I kind of integrated them together because it spoke to me on quite a deep level of, I love the women's game. I love the men's game. I love rugby, if I'm honest, and it's all just rugby. And so it was really nice actually now to be able to focus on both. And leverage. There's a bit more profile on the Raeburn Shield, and it's a bit easier to get. But I really love that I can leverage that to make sure that the Utrecht Shield gets that kind of share. And I think there'll be other environments where the Utrecht Shield does that for the Raeburn Shield, because it depends on the audience, doesn't it? People are really interested in either. And I would say this year it's 40 years since the first Women's International. So it's actually quite a big year. Like the first Women's Rugby International was in 1982 in Utrecht. And I think 40 years is kind of flying under the radar, but it's a pretty big milestone, I think.
Yeah, especially when you see the way the game has travelled. It's done in 40 years, probably what the men's game's done in 150. Yeah. It's a phenomenal thing, and I think it just adds power that they're both there, because it is for everyone. You've said, it's rugby. That we need to get away from this trying to draw lines in things. It's just rugby, and to have those two prizes up for grabs, I'm pretty sure, if the Scottish women thought they were playing for the Utrecht Shield or the Irish or the Welsh in the Six Nations coming up, it would add a little bit of spice and a little bit of interest, and it'd be great to have a presentation after the game for a meaningful piece of silverware.
The presentation. So what I would love one day is for a real shield. Come to that. I'm hoping to make one, but for a real shield that the captain has to carry it out onto the pitch at the beginning of the game and place it on a holder at the side of the pitch. And then nobody's allowed to touch it until somebody either defends it or successfully challenges for it, at which point there has to be a handing over ceremony. And I would envisage that captain to captain, you'd have to personally hand that shield over, because there's theatre to that, right? Like it's a personal thing. And so like Wales right now is the current Raeburn Shield holders. Genuinely, whether this is recognised by World Rugby or not, genuinely, they're at the end of a line of winners since 1871. How cool is that? Like, they can point back to the birth of the international game and be like, yeah, we're at top of the pile.
And the Rugby World Cup is so fresh that this is a proper investment in the tradition of the game. I don't know if you're aware, but up here in Scotland, we actually have the Bill McLaren Shield, which is played for in club rugby, but you only get your name on it if you defend it 3 times. Nice. Because otherwise, I think it would have to be
around.
the size of a house. But and I got my paws on it again back to Boroughmuir. We beat Melrose at the Greenyards, the home of Sevens, and we got it. And do you know, I didn't even know we were playing for it. I didn't even know we were playing for it. No, and it was just given to the committee men in the committee room. And I didn't know until they arrived on the bus, and I was like, "Give me that!" Bill McLaren's everyone's hero. He's the voice of rugby, and for me to get my paws on something that, Bill didn't know that was ever going to be a thing. But I would love that to be given a higher profile. I think some of these, because I'm so in admiration of the Ranfurly Shield, and I loved it, and I got fully absorbed in Mulu and Waikato, and I kind of like the Chiefs, but actually, I loved that, and that was so different from anything I'd ever seen before. But defending the log of wood was this amazing, mystical, powerful thing that. Because you've already summed it up at the very beginning. It was for the fans. I'm sure the players were motivated by it, but the fans were motivated by it.
Yeah. That's the thing, and I think there's the fun, right? A lot of us are anorex, and we like looking things up, and we like statistics, and there is something deeply satisfying about looking ahead and going, when do I get a shot? So I know right now that for the All Blacks to get a shot, Ireland need to come out of the Six Nations with the Raeburn Shield, or else we don't get a chance. And so I can already see that that's slipping away, if I'm honest. That's, I'm not sure if that's going to happen. So it's that thing of kind of looking ahead and investing in it. And I remember actually in November, there was some people who were saying, some Scots actually, who were watching the South Africa-England game, hoping England would win because they knew if they had the Raeburn Shield, they'd get the first shot at it. And I was like, that is the power of the Shield right there, to have a Scotsman supporting England so that they can win a prize. Like, you've done all right?
And that, I was just going to say that. So that adds another layer. You're now going to be supporting Ireland and adding a bit of weight to that so that you boys get a crack.
Yeah, and so that's exactly it, right? Like, it helps you pick a dog in the fight, because all of a sudden you're kind of like, all right, what's the math to get me through so that we get a shot again? And it is that dog in the fight. It gets you invested in other games,
That is brilliant. Now, we're not all anoraks, Dave. I hate to tell you this. We're not all anoraks, but you are. Some of the graphics you've produced on your social media. I love the race that you chart
the bar
from
chart
the
race.
first one. That is so cool. I mean, I can only dream of having the tech skills for that nonsense. But you obviously get a massive kick out of this.
Yeah, I think I always enjoy data. I think data is interesting, but I like meaningful data, right? Things that come through. And so, like, the bar chart race is a really good example. It just shows successful Raeburn Shield wins over time, and so it's fascinating to see the way it ebbs and flows. Scotland starts strong because they won the first one, and then England kind of come to the path. New Zealand don't even show up, I think, until 1923. And there's this awesome point in that thing where you get to the 70s and South Africa and New Zealand really start to catch up on the traditional home nations. And then in the kind of late 90s, there's this battle between New Zealand and South Africa to who's got the most wins. Subsequently, New Zealand have kind of raced ahead a bit, much to my pleasure. But it's one of those things that's really interesting seeing how it flows. And, like you can see over World War II, South Africa held the shield. So there was like 5 games through the World War. Not quite sure how they still happened. But they held it for the most days because they held it for like 13 years because South Africa held it from like 1937 through into 1950 odd. And so you get these remarkable little quirks of history. I worry whenever South Africa hold the shield because they held it in World War I, they held it in World War II, and they held it during the pandemic. I feel like there's a problem, right? If they win it again, what the hell's coming next?
Are you finger pointed here? Are the South Africans up to something?
As much as I love playing the box, I feel like they might be like the kind of bringers of doom,
We won't clip that one. We definitely won't clip that. I could get you in a world of trouble.
I mean, South African rugby Twitter is an amazing thing, so it might give me lots of attention.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll get Razzie involved. That'll definitely get you a lot of attention. So, is the dream? Here's a scenario: World Rugby come on board. A trophy is a shield is made, and we get to a World Cup final between the All Blacks and, well, hell, it's my podcast, between the All Blacks and Scotland. And it's not just the World Cup final, but it's also for the Raeburn Shield. Do you sit back with a gin and tonic and a cigar and go, my work here is done?
Yeah, I think, the World Rugby recognition thing has become less important to me over the years because I think I realize that that's not what drives me. It is as an end goal, but the bit that drives me is that actually, how much fun would it be if everyone knew about this? And if everyone was tracking it and we're able to, another thing to have a bit of banter about, to look at, to follow your other teams. So yes, that would be amazing. But actually the bit that kind of warms the cockles in my heart is probably the fun that we can all have with it, and so to the making of the shield, I have plans to make the shields. So this year, I think I'm going to try and make them. I have done, so for instance, I've got a Foamex version of the Utrecht Shield, which I took to one of the Red Roses games in November. Got the team to sign it, which was nice.
Oh, that's cool.
So I've got a load of photos of them holding it. But I am planning to make the shield. I'm going to use a Scottish oak to make the Raeburn Shield in honor of them, and I'll use a French oak or equivalent, but French wood for the Utrecht Shield because they were the first holders of that one. And then, it shows all of the winners around it. But as you were saying earlier about, the Bill McLaren Shield, I want to have badges for each of the teams that win it. And if you win it, you get a special badge in the middle. And then that can mark, if you manage to get 5 defences, then you get a mark of notification if you manage to get 10 defences. And there's only England, South Africa, and New Zealand who have done 10 defences. So it's like, and I think that'll bring real, right? Because you'll be able to follow around in it the full history of international rugby in the men's and the women's game with a real shield. I feel like it's one of those things when it's real and the data that's on each one of those badges, you could sit there and study the history of the game in one place. And then as a player or as a fan, you'd know that that whole history is yours, that you're actually at the end of it.
But the data only tells a bit of the story. For me to look at that and look at a year and a victory, my mind would then start racing with who and where and what happened and what was the score and what was the crowd, and these things just spark off the romance in us.
Yeah, it's funny. I was doing some kind of on this day things, kind of looking back, and so I did one not long ago. A guy called Arthur Gould, who was a Welsh player, and it was really nice because it was kind of he was the star. I think it was a game in like 1894 or something, and I posted out on that on the kind of social media bits, and the amount of people who kind of chimed with it, who were just like, "Oh, actually, I've heard of him," and thinking through, and it's exactly that. It takes you back to those stories, and then there was this whole conversation about who the glamour boy of today is for Welsh rugby. And actually, that's the nice thing, right? Is you've got those ties through history to kind of go, well, Arthur Gould won it back in the 1890s. Now you've got Gavin Henson, and it's like the, I mean, I'm not sure who would call the glamour boy of Saturday's team.
Rhys Zammit. That man is handsome. Yes, he's good looking. Although he's no Darcy Graham though, is he? He's no Darcy Graham. Anyway, that's a fight and an argument, a comparison for another day.
Well, it depends where your preferences lie. It's
always with Darcy Graham. And if your preferences are not with Darcy Graham, you're wrong. Let's just lay that one on the table right now. It's been played over 200 different winners, or changes of hands. The Utrecht Shield could be 40 years old this year if it was in place. When you take that mock-up shield and the players sign it, did they ask? Were they interested? Was it something that they commented on?
Yeah, do you know what? What was really nice was they were all really happy to interact. That team are amazing. They're brilliant ambassadors for their team. The way they were with the kids sticking around is brilliant. But Poppy Cleal, for instance, who had captained the team and is a fantastic player, she recognized it immediately and was like, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to celebrate with this," and like held it up like that. And I was just like, "Poppy, you're my hero," It's and so it was really nice to see that start to come through. And I think, at the moment it's curiosity, right? Like I'm pretty realistic about that, but as we get it real, and I'm hoping that there might be an event that takes place for the celebration of that 40 years in Utrecht, and I would hope that we'll have the shield there as well. So, there'll be a few things like that where actually we can start to celebrate it and start to bring it through. At the moment, I wouldn't hand the shield over to a team because if it's not official, we know what rugby teams do with things. We've all been there. So it needs to be official in that terms in order to not have it wind up as firewood.
One of your principles, I think, is that anyone can get a shot at this. So, in cricket, the only two teams can win the Ashes. In the Calcutta Cup, there's only two teams can win the Calcutta Cup. Whereas this is genuinely open to all as far as elite sport can allow anybody to have a crack at it.
Yeah.
The motivation for a player is, or that's not true, but a lot of motivations for players is show me your medals. To say that you've had a shot of one of these trophies would be quite a big deal, and it's amazing to hear Poppy Cleal had seen it on social media. Have you had any nice interactions on social media that's given you a little shot in the arm and thought, right, let's keep this going?
Yeah, there's been a few. I mean, I don't think any that are huge. I think it's mostly regular folk, right? I mean, I was excited when you engaged, and Squidge Rugby, like that was a moment for me. As soon as Squidge was retweeting, you're like, boom. But in terms of players, it's a bit harder because it's not there yet, right? Like it's not. And I also am aware that for the unions, they can't engage because it's not sanctioned by World Rugby. I'm not naive to the fact that really they can't engage with it at this point. But that's fine. The rest of us can, and so we kind of take it from there. So I think, a few times people have kind of said, "Oh, look, you talk to World Rugby." The answer is yes in a couple of different ways, but nothing at any level, because the truth is we're probably not at that point yet. We need to have the fans on board. And so you'll often see me talking about trying to build a following, and it's not huge at the moment. But I think more recently I've recognized that actually the following is what matters in terms of spreading the word, and then the job's done. Actually, once it's out there and we're all tracking it and we're all following it, everything else is irrelevant. We're enjoying it, whether it's recognized or not. Yeah, and it will be recognized, right?
Here's the invitation. You need to come up to Raeburn Place. I don't know if you've seen, but there's been a documentary made about that first that first game, and it premiered at Raeburn Place. I was lucky enough to be invited. I'm also lucky enough to actually feature in it, which just blew my socks off. But Raeburn Place is going through a major redevelopment at the moment. They're going to have the museum, and it's a nice place to go for a cup of coffee. So you need to come up and have a wander around Raeburn Place, and that's got to be the place you launch it, hasn't it? It has to be done at Raeburn Place.
I've talked to a couple of lads at Raeburn Place. It's been a long time now, but I do go up to Edinburgh semi regularly, or at least before the pandemic. And they're really friendly. They're really interesting. I think they love the fact that it recognises their role in the birth of the game. One of the things that I always wanted was wood from Raeburn Place. That was one of my dreams. And I think now I've kind of realised I've never quite managed to get it. But actually, it's fine. I'll make it out of Scottish wood. And then if we can get a little bit of wood from Raeburn Place, I'll put it in the heart of the shield. I only need a little bit. Just the heart. That's what matters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll get one of those the trees chopped down in Inverleith Park. Yeah. We'll go and just take a little sliver off to get in the middle there. Dave, I absolutely love it. So what can we do to help build this following and get this message out there?
Yeah, I think the biggest things is following us on social media, but probably beyond that is actually sharing it and mentioning it to people. But it's also clubhouse conversations, right? Like, oh, mate, have you heard about this? If you run a quiz, stick it in the quiz. It's that thing of spreading the word wherever we can. Because the Raeburn Shield is, I love now, occasionally I'll have people mention it to me who I don't know, and I'm like, this is brilliant because I haven't told you. And for the Utrecht Shield, I think there's a real opportunity with that because the Women's Six Nations coming up. At the moment, I'm focusing a lot on the Raeburn Shield because the men's game's what's being played. I'll switch focus quite a lot towards the Utrecht Shield as that tournament picks up. And I think there's a huge focus and opportunity with the women's game just for us all to get a lot more enjoyment out of some great rugby. I think there's a huge amount of great code being played that lots of people haven't been exposed to yet. And I hope the Utrecht Shield can be part of that journey as it kind of grows out.
Yeah.
So
the women are phenomenal ambassadors, aren't they? You've already mentioned that they engage and they hang around. They're still very accessible because it's not gone huge yet and it's growing, and it'd be a great time to get in and just add another layer to that.
Yeah. And I think it's one to be supported, right? Like, as I said, rugby's rugby, and I want to see everyone get their chance. And I think
Dave, I love it. I love it. It's so nice to speak to people similarly infected by this ridiculous game that hurts and is ridiculous. It just is. And someone like you putting time and energy into this, I love it. I love the passion that you've got and the time you're dedicating to it and the enthusiasm you show. Typical Kiwi, and being from Dunedin, the weather doesn't matter to you, does it?
No, to be fair, I mean, I'm that guy who wears shorts all year round, so I accepted it long ago.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us. I've absolutely loved it, and I'm going to do everything I can to help you promote and get the word out. I'm looking forward to you launching the Raeburn Shield at Raeburn Place with Scotland.
Well, you guys just need to win it again, right? Like,
that's all we have to do. We just have to beat a really good team. Yeah, bloody Kiwis, make it sound so simple.
Hey, mate, we haven't held it since 2017, so you've held it twice since then. So
yeah, we've got no World Cups to show either, though.
There's time. I mean, I think 2050 is coming up.
Yes. Dave, all the best. Great to see you. I look forward to catching up with you in the flesh at some point very, very soon. Thank you, my man.
Thank you. Cheers.
Absolutely love it. You just got to admire somebody who puts so much time and energy into something just because he loves it and he's passionate about it. You heard the man. Follow him on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram. It is a great thing. He's got all sorts of data and stats and pretty looking data and bar graphs. It's really, really cool. And to see countries like Romania and Japan have held it, I think that makes it a pretty fair competition too. If you've enjoyed it, you can catch us on Acast, Spotify and Apple. You can watch on YouTube and Facebook. Please go and have a look at the back catalogue. I'm sure there's something there for everyone. There's lots more to come in the future too. In the meantime, get yourself on social media. Follow the Raeburn Shield and the Utrecht Shield. Follow us at Happiness is Egg Shaped. In the meantime, my name is Bruce Aitchison, and my happiness is egg-shaped. I look forward to speaking to you all again very, very soon.